once you're invested, unless it's a very lucrative number, I'm talking in absolute terms, not in percentage terms, extremely lucrative number for you to forego, do not think of pulling out at any point in time, because you do not know which of these will become a unicorn, which of these will hit IPO, right? I still remember Flipkart में किसी ने 10 लाख रुपए डाले थे और वो 100 करोड़ बने थे, right? Uh, you never know which one is your 1000x. So unless you have hit a number which is more than your life savings, say 5 crores, 10 crores, 20 crores, which is fairly reasonable for retailers like us, right? And you're tempted to not wait till IPO or for it to hit a unicorn status. Once invested, just forget. Just forget. That is one thing I'd like to tell you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of Invest with Dexter. At Dexter, as you know, we have been investing in startups for the past 3 years. We've built a portfolio of 31 plus companies across the spectrum of consumer tech, healthcare, education, B2B SaaS, deep tech, finance. With the launch, with this initiative of Invest with Dexter, we are bringing to you more and more angels from very diverse backgrounds to speak about their experience of angel investing and investing in startups at early stages. With this, I have another guest with me tonight. Without much further ado, I'll pass it on to him. So, hi Rahil, how are you?
Hey Ankit, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing good too. Thanks, Rahil. Thank you so much for taking time to be on this podcast and share your experience with our viewers. For the benefit of our viewers, Rahil, let's start with a brief introduction about you.
Sure. So this is Rahil Maniyar. Pardon me. Um, I started. I mean, it might sound boring, but it is what it is, right? So I started my career after like any other person in Bangalore. Like they say, when you throw a stone, falls on an engineer or a dog. So I was the former, right? And then worked with Mindtree for a little over 2 years, 2.5 years. Uh, there was a reason I wanted to do MBA, and then luckily got into IIM, did my MKPMG India, I joined, worked there for about over 2 years. After working there for about 2 years, I joined an IT research firm called IDC. Worked in the consulting space for a little over a year over there, and then I joined a life insurance firm called Star Union Daiichi, wherein I was working with the South India business head as the executive assistant. Today, give it a little bit of touch of humor case back then. So yeah, I mean, I was an executive assistant. If you ask me personally, from a professional standpoint, more than I am, more than KPMG, what actually, where when you work as an executive assistant with the business head or with the CEO, you start to think like a businessman. Right? So after that, I joined KPMG Global Delivery Center as an associate director. Worked there for about 2 years. I've been all over the place. And then joined an IT services firm as chief of staff called Mar Labs. Worked there for 15, 16 months. Obviously, chief of staff again is as good as it can get, but somehow I just felt I could have done more. So I went back to KPMG. So my third stint with KPMG. There, I was doing planning, strategy, programs. So yeah, so that's that in terms of my professional experience. And before I start and explain about how my angel investing career started, I will let Ankit ask his questions.
Great. So yeah, that brings me to my next question. Rahil, you come with a lot of diverse experience. You yourself have, having started as an engineer, traversed so many domains, worked with so many companies at so many different diverse positions. My next question is, how did you get into angel investing? What's been your experience and how long have you been here?
Ankit, I'll just take this opportunity to ask if my language uh, won't be unparliamentary, but can it be a little informal? So, if that's
Absolutely.
okay, I'll,
Please
yes,
go ahead.
right. So, I mean, as you rightly said, fortunately, unfortunately, I had diverse experience. I'm not sure if it's actually good or bad, to be honest, because you do realize, uh, like they say, right, inch wide, mile deep is much bigger than mile wide, inch deep. So I was all over the place, but एक वो I mean अंदर एक कीड़ा होता है ना कि कुछ करना है. I always had that, and to the extent कि I mean since I had that before MBA as well, and that's why I wanted to do MBA in the first place. The frustration grew so much that at one point in time, when I realized I only have this urge, but I'm not doing anything, just said, leave it. I started taking classes for CAT. So it had reached that level, right? Wherein when I mean you are happy with what you're doing professionally, but you have the urge to do something. I mean you feel that void, and when you don't know what to do, you just pick up whatever you can, right? Build good connections over there in terms of like-minded people, people with similar backgrounds, wherein then we started coaching people for their CAT and all that. And again, I mean, I grew tired of it in terms of taking classes and all, because also when you work 5 days a week, the kind of roles that I was handling at one point in time, you do want time for yourself. So I was like, this is not working. And it's not just about not working. It's like, where will this yield? So I stopped doing that, except just taking classes, not taking classes, taking mock interviews. Um, in our IIM indoor community, um, once a particular opportunity was floated, right? And it was by one of our alumnus, right? And they said that they are looking for people to invest in. And as I said, there was this urge to do something. As like, why not give this a try, right? And then I researched a lot about it. I mean, the name of the firm was Rupify, is Rupify rather, right? Um, I was new to this whole world, to be honest, at that point in time, right? Uh, then I met Anubhav, the founder of Rupify, right? Whenever I think of Anubhav, shout out to him. I can think of only one person. Although I have a love-hate relationship with this character MS Dhoni, but he's a legend, obviously, right? I don't have a love-hate relationship with Anubhav. I'm not saying this because I have invested in his firm, but because he's extremely calm. Like I've seen a lot of people, but he's extremely calm, composed, right? And although it was my first opportunity, I started to uh, dig a lot deeper, right? I mean, I tried to cover all the bases. The founders were serial entrepreneurs. I was lucky to have found an opportunity in which the first one itself happened to have three founders, of which two were serial entrepreneurs, not one, right? And all three were IITians. Couple of them were IIT plus IIM. They had been shortlisted by Y Combinator to the extent that they felt that going to Y Combinator is a waste of time. We don't want to waste our time over there. That was the kind of confidence they had in their own team and abilities, and perhaps execution as well back then. And then I even researched a little bit about the founder, and there were absolutely no red flags. I don't know, good, bad, ugly, whatever you would like to call it. I know, and I'm perhaps going to contradict myself by the end of this particular discussion. But then I didn't believe in diversification back then. I was like, and me being single, not married or whatever, as like I have nothing to lose, right? So when I was initially thinking I'll invest this much or this much, I went almost 6 to 7x of that particular amount. I don't want to say how much of my life savings I put in it, but it was a significant percentage, right? Um, and it turned out to be great. That was my first into with startup investing, and then obviously it turned out to be great. It has subsequent rounds. Tiger is on board. Vesemir Ventures is on board with them now. Hopefully, I don't know if I'll be allowed to or I want to stay until they become a unicorn or not or what. But then, yes, so far so good with Rupify. That's how I started. And then one day, one of my juniors, I don't want to call him junior because he's a better friend than a junior. Kirtan called me up and he said, I mean, आप तो पागल हो गए हो इतना पैसा डाल दिए हो तो why not get in touch with this person called Tushar, right? He was running a family, he was handling a family office earlier. I forgot the name of that particular, but
Dr.
now he has
Malpani.
started a particular Malpani Ventures. मेरे दिमाग में पानी कुछ आ रहा था. So he has joined this particular angel network. Do you want to speak to him? So I spoke to Tushar. It was a very good experience. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously there will be, again, as I said, subsequent questions, but I started my journey that way. And then that's how, with the help of Kirtan, because Kirtan is an extremely aware guy, right? I mean, again, a shout out to Kirtan. He was also, I mean, he might feel a little sheepish about this, but he was also the winner of some of the Tata Crucibles, I guess, indoor challenge back in the day. Right. So he's that aware guy. He always is on the tip of toes in terms of digital, whatever is happening in the digital world. So through him, I got introduced to Dexter. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Rajni. That puts a lot of brief introduction about you and your journey into angel investing while we unravel more. So my next question would be, since you've been angel investing since say about 4, 5, 6 years now, how
Three, four,
many
3, 4 years.
3 to 4 years? Yeah,
So,
quite
yeah,
time, I
I
guess.
think, yeah, 4 years. Yes.
4 years. So you've been invested in so many companies. How many investments so far? And if I have to ask you, what all sectoral exposure you have?
Sure.
And of course,
I
one
made about,
pre-question is, since you were not, earlier a fan of diversification, what got you
Mhm.
into diversification?
No, okay. And Ankit, I have this tendency to speak a lot at any point in time. If you do feel
Please,
that I'm
please.
going astray, please stop me. Right.
Absolutely.
Uh, the first question is in terms of how many investments. Uh, if I'm not wrong, I think I made about 18 investments. Um, don't want to sound proud, but that is one thing people say, "Oh, you are an IM at this and that." I said, "I'm not sure. If I'm so proud about those things, but I'm definitely proud about this particular thing that I invested in 18 startups, 17 or 18. Pardon me for that, but yeah, somewhere in that range, right?" Um, and what sectoral preferences, if you were to ask me, Ankit, to be honest, I don't know. I'm not one of those founder investors, right? They may have the reasons to be sector specific because they know an industry way too well or whatever. For me, I don't have any sector preference as such, right? Um, but if you ask me today, if you were to ask me what is it that I would like to bet on, I mean, because I have not been, I mean, you know my investments, right? I have been sector agnostic. And I'll come to the part about diversification. Why did I choose to diversify over investing in one? Um, I'm not a sector specific person, right? Why did I choose to diversify or not? The answer is actually I didn't choose to diversify, right? Um, might sound a little philosophical or whatever, but I am the biggest fan of Masayoshi Son, right? Because no matter what the world calls him, I don't think there is a people may call him mad, people might call him whatever the heck, but then I don't know of any other person who took gasoline in his one hand and told the mayor of the city, if you don't give me the license of telecom, I'm going to burn myself alive, right? It requires that kind of madness. It requires that kind of, I'm not saying everyone needs to be, but I was super impressed by that guy, right? Um, so I believed in going all in, and that's the reason I went almost all in on my first investment as well. That was always the thing, right? Um, uh, Many of my investments, people might call it unintelligent or not or what, but then I didn't think much, to be honest. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? But then I'd like to touch upon two things. So my point to why I wanted to diversify, I never wanted to diversify. It's just that because I went all in as like, okay, this is decent enough, I'll invest. The next one I stumbled upon, okay, not bad, invest. Third, I found fine, not bad, invest. Right? To an extent where I suddenly started wondering, am I investing a little too much? Right? My friends were asking me, I mean, do you have some property of inheritance or something? I said, no, nothing like that. Just that you are married, I'm not. And luckily, unluckily, I'm not too much into materialistic possessions. So I don't have a house, I don't have a car, I don't have wife or kids, I don't have, I have cleared my education, luckily. And so fine, I don't mind investing, whether or not I get back the money. That's the thing, right? One thing I would like to touch upon, Ankit, one of my particular characters, which may not necessarily be true in most other spheres, but which actually has turned out to be in my favor when it comes to startup investing, is I get a little too excited about anything, right? Be it people, when I find someone really nice, pure from heart, good to speak to, knowledgeable, I love that person, right? When I find any particular opportunity, I get way too excited about it, right? I think that has worked for me in my favor when it comes to startup investing, right? Because if you're a skeptic, I'm not sure if this is your field. This because I mean, most of your MBAs, most of the listeners, even if not, I mean, you don't need to be an MBA to know this. This is the riskiest asset class, as they call it, right? So if you're a skeptic, this is not your cup of tea. I'm not saying it's not about capability at all. It's just about thought process, choice, and all of that, right? So if you have 1,000 reasons to reject, I wouldn't say one to select, but even if you have reasonable number of reasons to invest in, then do invest. And I can say that I won't take the names because then it might not sound right. But then outside of Rupee 5, a couple of uh, we didn't get a chance to invest in, so I can't speak about that. I don't know how it is doing now. But one about which I was extremely gung ho, that one bust, right? One I didn't want to even invest in, and this is at that point in time wherein I was investing left, right, center, right? About a couple of years back, I still remember August of between July to October of 2021. I don't know, I invested in about 10 to 12 startups, right? I was just writing checks left, right, center. So even at that point in time, or just before that or after that, there was an opportunity. I passed it on, right? I passed it on. Then Tushar sent me a note by Cube.vc, which happens to be an investment house based out of Singapore. He said, please look at this. I'm not trying to force you to invest, but have a look at it. I think this is a good opportunity. And I said, fine, fair enough. I'll go and invest. And that turned out to be a multi-bagger, right? Not that I have cashed out of it, but the point is, startup investing is like that. At the end of the day, yeah, again, as I said, maybe I'll touch upon this at a subsequent point in time on a subsequent question. But then uh, you need to be, I wouldn't say as bullish as Harshad Mehta, but you need to be an optimist to do startup investment, right? You need not be a crazy person like Son or the Mehtas, but at least you need to be a little crazy. If you're extremely practical, extremely calculative, extremely left brain, not sure if this is what you should be doing, right? I mean, not that you need to go berserk and invest in everything, but then you need to be a little optimistic. Then obviously this is your thing.
Got it. Thanks, Rahil. That's a very, very detailed answer and puts a lot of perspective for our viewers as well. My next question, since you have invested in a lot of companies, about 18, 20 of them so far, and you already mentioned about Rupify, you mentioned about another company. Help us understand some success stories and maybe a couple of them which didn't really work out for you. You may choose not to name them or name them, but your
Yeah,
experience around investing with them and how they've performed.
yeah. Um, I'll try, and I mean, I was always a fan of structuring, right? Maths तो most engineers को आता है, but मैं ऐसा भी नहीं कि कोई fields medalist हूँ. So many people, my schoolmates might think I'm good at math, but I know coming from the institute that I studied in, my maths is just average or a little above average. But more than that, what I was always excited about was structuring an answer, whatever. So I'll try and take a stab at this particular question from two, three perspectives, right? Um, One is In general, okay, I'll name first things first. So the three, four things that I'll try and touch upon is one is the success stories and the ones which didn't take off. Two, what is it that you need to look at and what not look at, right? Three, no matter what you do, what might work and what might not work, right? So the first thing, success stories, one is obviously Rupify. Second one is Fellow, right? Fellow, I don't know how many of you have seen because they have even started releasing YouTube ads these days. And please go have a look at it if any of you happen to be a digital first investment person. It to the extent that they're even giving and being an investor, I must know better. But then I think they're even giving 10 to 12% assured returns, right? So I'm sure that will be an exciting thing for to look at. I'm not saying go and invest all of your savings, but at least a lakh to whatever spare money you have. I don't think that should be a problem to try out the platform. It's an interesting opportunity because something that like that happened in US and that went big, wherein they're trying to gamify investments, right? I mean, some of you might be a little skeptical, like I said, but then the point is, investments, if you look at it, I mean, it's all about trying to do differently, right? I mean, in a competitive space like fintech, right? When you have the surgeons like the Rupeefies of the world, you also need other people who are trying to think a little differently, right? Who are trying to think, because you can't compete with the fund house, you can't compete with the mutual fund, you can't compete with the Saurabh Mukherjees of the world who run um, PMS, portfolio management services arms. So, but then you still feel that there is this gap wherein you have the people who have just started earning or are college going kids of rich dads or not, but who have good habit of saving, up to the people who are just new to the world of investing. How do they try and grab their attention? These people realize that the best way to do it would be to gamify it, right? So I think they're stuck gold with it, and that's why, I mean, there was a good investor in subsequent round also who saw this particular opportunity and they've gone big on it. So please go and have a look at Fellow. That was my second success story. um, Third is something that I learned from Tushar just about a week or two back. uh, is about um, which is that sorry, Ankit, which is that thing, which is into cents and all, which resells on online platforms. D से है ना कुछ नाम. uh, I must know better, and pardon for that.
Choose
Right?
not to
But
name.
there, yeah, Discover Pilgrim, right? Discover Pilgrim is the name of the firm, right? And my reason to invest in that, again, one thing I realized, I don't know, I mean, I do um, trading as well. I do trade in F&O in capital markets, right? But more than F&O, those of you who are into swing trading, who are into picking up stocks and not necessarily doing value investing or investing in fundamentally sound companies, people who are into technical analysis, as they call it. What you try and do when you're doing technical analysis is essentially try and find different means, right? Be it price action. Sorry, this might sound a little technical, Ankit. Just for half a minute, I'll sound a little technical. Pardon me for that. Whether you use price action or you use indicators, those are all just the means. But what you're using through these means is to try and determine where is the smart money moving, right? So what I learned in the process, when I was doing, I drew parallels, right? What I learned in the process in startup investments also is, you don't have indicators or price action or anything like that over here in startup investments, but you do know that this is backed by such and such a firm, right? It's like they say, no, it's very difficult to beat the indices. Likewise, it's difficult for an individual. I mean, unless you are poor individual, there are always exceptions, right? The Vijay Kedias of the worlds in capital markets. Likewise, there might be angel investors who might be better than VCs at the end of the day, but those are exceptions, right? VCs know the game better, right? So why not just back those particular startups which are backed by good micro VCs? I mean, if anyone were to ask me today, what can I do if I were to start? I will come to those particular things in terms of capital, in terms of mindset. But once you have those two things in place, Um, the strategy would be very simple. Sector agnostic, sector specific does not matter, right? Just back the ones which are backed by good firms. As simple as that, because they know the game better than you do, right? As I said, fellow took off because I read an investment note by Cube.vc. Had I not read, maybe I wouldn't have invested. I would have been a fool today, and only to speak about Rupify, so to say. Right? That was the only thing which I did by myself. I mean, I'm not talking about the other ones I did by myself, but the ones that took off, right? So three have taken off. One is Rupify. Second, as I said, I followed an investment move. The third one, I invested in Discover Pilgrim because it was backed by a micro VC, which is extremely big. The biggest D2C brands of the country are backed by Fireside Ventures, be it Mama Earth, be it Boat, be it any other, right? So when I learned that Discover Pilgrim is backed by Fireside Ventures, is like, I remember asking Tushar, he said, you only have 5 lakhs. And at that point in time, I used to invest along with my friends, right? I mean, a couple of us are extremely big and bullish and we go big. Then there are other friends, close friends. So it goes in my name or my friend's name, but then we are not so particular about those things. We are like, the philosophy and the ideology is more important. Um, and three of us were wanting to invest. And what Tushar tells me is all you can invest is 5 lakhs. I was like, here all three of us are sitting with at least 10 lakhs to invest in. We want at least 20 or 30 lakhs to invest in. Tushar said, sorry, all, I mean, as a network, I have an allocation of 20 of 30, 25 lakhs, some such amount. I said, this is unfair. I remember that distinctly, right? And today I learned that that has multiplied by 8 to 10 times in a single round, right? So, as I said, those were about the success stories. And one of those which didn't take off, most of you must, I mean, I won't name it because for good reasons, right? But then it is very high on social media and all of that. I was extremely bullish about that particular venture for the simple reason, like they say in retail, it's all about place, right? In startups, it's all about the team. That's so true, right? Why did Rupify take off? I mean, I might not be the best person to speak about it. Obviously, Anuva is the best person to speak about it. But then, why did Rupify take off? Because when he did Chorus or whatever that was called, the previous one that he did, uh, right? It starts with Q, the Cubera, I remember, I guess, right? They realized that they did something wrong, right? And so when they say, I mean, to many people, what happens is these might sound like philosophy. This might sound like some क्या बोलते हैं उसको motivational statement to make you a person learns more from failure than through success. That's actually true, right? I mean, there, although they had raised 15 million, and why they didn't go on to become 5 million and then subsequently a little bigger amount, why didn't they go on to become a bigger venture, was because they did something which Anuvu learned, right? So the point is, the team matters a lot. The reason the team matters a lot is because they learn through their mistakes, right? And especially the reason, I mean, it's many people think at times, right, that why is it that VCs back and why is it that serial entrepreneurs get such a premium today? If Mukesh Bansal starts a startup, उसके अनाउंस करते उसको 15 million का चेक मिल जाता है, right? Anant Narayanan, within 6 months he started a unicorn. क्या पागलपंती है? It is that small world wherein each one is backing the bigger guy. That's not, it might sound like that, and it's not true. I mean, there is a reason why they back those guys, right? So team is extremely important. That is something that I would like to say. So what I learned definitely is team is extremely important. Uh, One thing, as I was trying to say, the structure that I was trying to give to this particular answer is one thing which I want to do now going forward, which perhaps I didn't. One of the other. Sorry to go back to the first part of the answer. One of the firms which is doing very good, although it's not a tech startup, is Tags, right? I mean, you must have heard about it, and that the best gift in recent times was given by my sister when she ordered from Tags, and she sent me a picture saying, I ordered from here. As like, thanks. I mean, that's the best thing you could do, right? So that guy is again a great guy, right? Although not a tech startup, he multiplied his revenues by multiple times within a year. Now he has onboarded Shikhar Dhawan. So it's going great guns. I only wish better for them. Coming back to investment philosophy, One of the things I want to change about myself is um, try and go more on non-linear models, right? Not try and invest too much in operationally intensive businesses, right? Unless it's for an altruistic purpose, in which case I don't mind even losing money. That's a different reason. But purely from a objective standpoint, one of the things that I would like to change about myself is to try and see if I can get to invest in more asset light, non-linear models, and hence all the sector agnostic earlier. If I were to think of something that I might want to do now, think of more B2B SaaS, not because it is the flavor of the month or the year or whatever. No, that's not the reason, because I realize more value creation and the possibility of multiplying multiple times over. Although the probability is lesser, but if it were to click, right, number of times it were to multiply, there is no limit to that, right? And you never know. I mean, the next WhatsApp might be sitting around. I know. I mean, I've spoken to a few startup founders. It's not as easy as it sounds, but you never know. The next WhatsApp might be sitting around the corner.
Got it. So Raj, that answers quite a few questions which I would have subsequently asked. So, thank you so much for answering quite a few of them. I'll ask something more Dexter specifics now,
Sure.
because you've been with Dexter for the longest period of time. You've invested. Actually, your first investment was even before I joined Dexter. So,
Yes.
you've seen Dexter's journey up close and personal. Out of your 18 startups, I'm damn sure 10 of them have been with Dexter. So, the
16, I guess.
oh, 16.
15, at least 15, if
So,
not six. Yeah, 15 of them.
yeah,
15 of them.
I'm damn sure that could be a closer number. I was being conservative with 10, but you've already said the number. So help us understand what has really gone into. I mean, I'm assuming Dexter has done a decent job, but would like to hear from you what's been good. You've seen our journey up close and personal. You've seen us grow. How has your experience been with Dexter? Please be very, very candid about it, the way you've always been. So help us understand, throw some light on Dexter's journey from your lens.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember back in the day, and believe me, I mean, I am the last guy who would try and speak formal, right? So anything that I'm saying is something that I truly believe in. I've stopped living that life wherein I say things for the heck of it. Um, so I still remember back in the day when some of my friends asked me, why don't you invest through some of these platforms, right? My simple answer to them was, although as much as I say that you can just follow the large investment firms where they are doing and leaving traces, you can just go and invest over there. But the truth also over there, I mean, if you are a part of the game, you will realize over a period of time, the good deals with the large firms are not necessarily directly available to you, right? So following them is not so easy as well, right? For all you know, the ones that you can see on those online platforms are the ones that are chewed and left over ones, right? Um, so I remember categorically telling one of my friends the reason I stuck with Dexter or one of the angel networks for a long time is at the end of the day, I don't think if you invest through any of the online platforms, you'll get the kind of access that you'll get if you are associated with an angel network, right? And it boy when I say access, it's not about backdoor entries. It's not about. It's just honest, truthful connections, right? Today, if I have a question regarding any investment, right, like Ankit rightly said, you rightly said, Ankit. I've always been candid. If I have any particular skepticism, question, clarification, right, I reach out to you. And be it Tushar and Devendra, I mean, he's a much bigger guy than he comes across as. I mean, for someone to lead a investment firm and then to have started an angel network subsequently, he's an extremely down to earth guy. Just because he makes himself so very available, we might tend to take him for granted and think that nahi, 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 aisa hai वैसा. But no. So that's the thing I genuinely loved about Dexter. Uh, it's true about any engine network, but in particular about Dexter also, what I truly loved was any question clarifications from the smallest to the biggest, whenever I had, right? Be it a question or a clarification, or if I had to reach out to one of the startups. I didn't have to give a damn. I didn't have to think. I could just shoot an email. Not even an email. I'm bad with emails. I don't want to get into how bad I am with emails. But then I can just reach out to any of you directly over WhatsApp or call directly, and then you are always accessible, right? So that's there. And then I also realized over a period of time, right, that the amount of due diligence that goes in even before bringing to us what you people bring is not small, right? हमको ये लगता है कि we tend to think that all they're doing is getting startups to us, right? It's not true, right? You do a lot of due diligence at your own end, right? And then I still remember about a little over a year back, right? I still remember Devendra saying when I met him at one of the mixers in Bangalore, right? That try and get to know the team as much as possible, right? So I see that philosophy with Dexter, right? I mean, they would rather go and invest in a team that they know is good than an idea which may or may not have good founders, right? Yes. Now people might say, why are we taking an emotional side? No, it's not about an emotional side or not. Believe me, I mean. I mean, Ankit, I don't know whether you are privy to this particular opportunity or not. The After Rupee 5, one of the first opportunities that came by, we could not invest because there are a lot of issues with respect to SEBI. There was a subsequent one I was extremely bullish about, and that person even took the money from, I mean, not the money, but then he took the commitment from Dexter, and then he shopped around for their offers, and then he ditched us, right? And those are the precise reasons why it is important to know the team, right? And I'm glad somewhere my philosophies match with that of Dexter, and those are the reasons why I have been with Dexter for so long. Yeah, and something I've been saying, which maybe which you could do better, is try and get more deals which are, like I said, non-linear asset-light kind of models. Right? That is the only thing I always had a feedback in terms of nothing else. Because I realized even the other day, when I said the other day, I'm talking about a few months back, I raised a particular concern. Can there be a little more um, regular touch on or regular update in terms of all the investments? I realized it was bad on my part that I was not looking at the updates that were being sent. So yeah, so there are no complaints, nothing to complain about, nothing I feel lacking or anything of that kind from Dexter. Always a great team that I've worked with. The people have been really good and approachable, more than anything else, to be really honest.
Great. Thanks, Rahil. That puts a lot of confidence and onus on us to continue performing to the liking and the fiduciary responsibility we have towards all our investors. And now that we are launching our fund, as you would rightly know about, right? And wherein you were rightly pointing out about access to the right sort of opportunities, building a diversified portfolio. Those are the two key things we have themed upon this fund, wherein our retail investors are now participating as LPs to the fund, where they get a very diversified portfolio. They participate with other micro VCs in the same opportunity, and we get a first-hand allocation for all our LPs in this fund, right? So that's been the theme for Dexter Ventures. Before I move on to my final and very exciting segment, one last question to you on as you rightly know, there are about 20,000 investors across India who are angel investing. If we see today's global scenario, India ranks third among the startups, count of startups after US and China. But if we see the number of angel investors, it's much, much behind. So for all those who are looking to start their angel investing journey, for all those who are fence sitting, for all those who are contemplating, what's your one message to them, to start to look at this asset class as well, apart from all the traditional investment asset classes?
Yes. I'm glad you asked that because otherwise I'd have taken that as an unsolicited question and answered that myself. Because I always believe that, I mean, हम अपने आप में बैठ के जितना मर्जी टाइम पास कर ले, काम कर ले, ना कर ले, but when someone is listening, we need to respect their time, right? And so long as I feel that uh, there is no takeaway for them, I feel that whether or not I did well, I don't like wasting other people's time, at least, and unless they are my friends, that's a different thing, right? So one of the things that I would like to tell them is a little bit of maths, right? Very quickly, right? What people need to understand. Ankit, can you hear me? Because I suddenly lost your video. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Sure. So people need to understand a little bit of maths, right? The basic maths is this: that if you think from an Angel Network perspective, the minimum amount that you would be required to invest in any particular startup is, say, 2.5 to 3 lakhs. Let's say for practical purposes 3 lakhs. And as you know it, I mean, no matter आप जितना मर्जी दिमाग लगा लो, right? I'm not saying I invested in 100 startups. Obviously, that's my aim in the next 5 years. That life का एक ही goal है कि uh, कुछ हो ना हो 100 startups में invest करना. I have my um, spiritual reasons for that, because I honestly don't. I think I'll come back to that particular message, why it is important to invest in startups, why it's our responsibility, if I can say so, especially of single people like me. But then, uh, my point is, so if each startup requires you to invest, say, 3 lakhs, and no matter how much brain you apply or not, in these 18 to 20 startups that I invested in, I learned one thing: ki once you applied your brains, right, it's a black box, right? It's a black box. Whether or not that will take off, it's honestly not in your control, right? And more than whether it is in your control or not, you'll be, I don't know, pleasantly or not, you'll be surprised by the ones which will take off and by the ones that will not take off, right? So my point is, your job is to try and jitna marzi aap maths laga lo, jitna marzi aap logical parameters basis which you evaluate startups laga lo, um, you have to be having money to invest in 8 to 10 startups. I'm not saying at a given point in time, but at least over a period of time, right? So always remember that unless you have 8 to 10 startups to invest in, because only one or two of them will take off. And I thought a lot about this. I discussed this with Keith and a few other friends. There is no point in trying and optimizing that number from 1 or 2 to 3 to 4, because even if that number goes from 1 or 2 and you hit your strike rate, improve your strike rate to 3 to 4, it's not necessary that those 3 to 4, it's like this, right? 1 or 2 may give 20x or 40x, but if you try and improve it to 3 to 4x, 3 to 4 out of 10x, those might just give 5 or 10x, right? So don't try and improve the laws of the nature when it comes to startup investing. Um, have enough money to invest in 8 to 10 startups at least to begin with, over a period of time at least, and then come in this particular asset class. And why I feel that one needs to invest in startups, there are macroeconomic reasons, and then, as I said, uh, the good term that Ankit used, our fiduciary responsibility, or whatever you like to call it. I'll tell you the macroeconomic reason is simple, right? Once back in the day, I had read about this particular article in Economic Times. This was way back, 6, 7, or 8 years back. A question was asked: ki, when will be the first $1 billion GMV e-commerce happen in? When will we have our first $100 billion GMV in India? Right? GMV ka e-commerce firm, or any startup for that matter. And then the article said 2030. I thought it was just another article where they have some gyan and no logic to it. Bolne ko kya ja raha hai, right? But then when I read the article, was the basis an interview with Rajan Anandan, who was the back then the Google India head. He gave a very simple reason that if you study historically, whenever the per capita income of a country crosses $4,000, right, the discretionary income of the nation goes up significantly. It does not go up proportionately, it goes up disproportionately. Meaning, आज की तारीख में अगर 1800 या $2,000 है, जितना भी है, $2,200 है, जिसमें एसेंशियल्स के लिए $1,500-1,600 जा रहा है, डिस्क्रिशनरी के लिए $500-600 जा रहा है. With inflation, when it crosses 4,000, it won't be like 3.2 and 800. That will become 2 and 2. So your discretionary income will go up by 5x or whatever. And then he said, this is not my theory. Go back and study history. China, Alibaba, I don't know whether how many of you know. I don't remember the day on which it happens, but on just 2 or 3 of their days in the entire year, they do a GMV of about 200 or $250 billion, Alibaba, right? and in the year they do more than $800 billion. This is the same Alibaba. In 2008, their GMV was just 10 billion, right? So from 10 to 800 to a trillion, you're talking about 80 to 100x in a matter of 12, 13 years. This is not even a 2023 number. The number 800, 850 I quoted is from 2020, if I'm not wrong, right? So we are at that juncture. India, it's not a story by any political party. I don't want to unnecessarily invite trouble for any of us over here. This is not a story or a narrative by any particular political party or the politicians. No, no politician can stop the force of nature that India is, right? And there are lots of macroeconomic reasons why India will grow, right? And also, just by deduction of the available opportunities, unless you're trying to find penny stocks which will grow, right? कोई हो सकता है Nigeria might take off, but you want also that not to go to zero. India will not go to zero, right? Of the bigger forces there are, right? Brazil is gone to dogs. China is going to dogs. Europe has we need not even go there, right? So the only country that is actually bound to grow in the next decade or so is India. So there are macroeconomic reasons. And now why we need to invest in startups? Think about it. I'll tell you my reasons. You can choose yours, right? I have not seen three things that any startup does. One, I am living in a city wherein, believe it or not, I do not have any debit or credit cards. I have this 20 rupee note with me, right? And I'm surviving just not even on three platforms, just on one platform, Paytm. ठीक है? Paytm है तो मैं I don't need to have any kind of currency, anything with me, right? आज के तारीख में भारत पे की वजह से these are the people who actually innovate. Swiggy is Bangalore. You need to be in Bangalore to understand what it is, right? Everything that you read in newspapers is used by people over here. Trust me, right? So I will never leave Bangalore for any other city in life, unless it's $1 billion opportunity. Obviously, then I'll be tempted to. But then one is innovation, and these take things forward. These take the world ahead. Two, obviously, they are creating jobs. Three, I'll tell you my spiritual reason. I have not seen in any formal setup a more committed set of individuals than startup employees. Forget the founders. Founders ka to they have their own reasons. Even if you meet a startup employee, right? Vis-a-vis someone working even in a very good firm like a Microsoft or an Intel or Oracle, right? The level of motivation that these employees have is something else, right? So you will not see a more committed set and a driven set of individuals than startup employees, right? I don't know why we need to have fourth reason to invest in, right? And obviously there are monetary reasons also to invest in. I mean, we have spoken enough about it. एक चल गया वो तुम्हारा फेसबुक निकल गया वो गूगल निकल गया तो फिर बल्ले बल्ले है, right? वो तो है ही, right? And one last thing, while what I would like to say, having suppose you have gathered enough capital and made your mind and everything, because the laws of nature say so, right? And I don't want to get into the maths of the LPs. I had heard that from Mahesh Murthy at IIM Bangalore once. I don't want to go there. That might be unnecessary information at this point in time. But then once you're invested, unless it's a very lucrative number, I'm talking in absolute terms, not in percentage terms, extremely lucrative number for you to forego, do not think of pulling out at any point in time, because you do not know which of these will become a unicorn, which of these will hit IPO. Right? I still remember Flipkart में किसी ने 10 लाख रुपए डाले थे और वो 100 करोड़ बने थे, right? Uh, you never know which one is your 1000x. So unless you have hit a number which is more than your life savings, say 5 crores, 10 crores, 20 crores, which is fairly reasonable for retailers like us, right? And you're tempted to not wait till IPO or for it to hit a unicorn status. Once invested, just forget. Just forget. That is one thing I'd like to tell you.
Got it. And thanks, Rahil. This has been one of the most informative and very deep driven conversations I've had so far with the investors I've spoken so far. So yeah, thank you so much. I feel this will benefit a lot of investors, a lot of people who are hearing this for the first time itself. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing so much details in depth. I'll move to the last and the most exciting segment of my conversation. While I don't
The
have
coffee
any
with current
coffee,
part, is it?
you guessed it right. While I don't have coffee nor current, and my hamper to you comes
No, I'm
only
straight.
after.
So
So the hamper comes to you only after we've made some good returns on your portfolio. I'll
sure.
jump on to the rapid fire round. My first question to you: three things you look for in a startup when you invest.
Three things. One is the opportunity big enough?
Hmm.
Two, is the team good? Right. The clarity of thought that might again have multiple branches of it. Well, I mean, both in terms of credentials and in terms of their clarity of thought. Three, if possible, as I said these days, is it an asset light model?
Team TAM business model, correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
Three things which are absolute red flag for you currently.
Three things which are absolute red flag. People just throwing numbers without having any understanding about the business, right? Lots of Excel. I don't. I mean, I have made a living out of Excel. It's not like I hate Excel, but just some people just throw random numbers, right? Not that. Two, if they try and do everything,
Hmm.
right? At the beginning itself, if they don't have a clear thought in terms of what they need to do at what point in time, as in if someone says that, because I remember back in the day, at one point in time I also did something, right? um, I mean, not did, pardon my language, but try to do something. छोटा मोटा MVP बनाया था, बहुत साल पहले की बात है. um, the one answer that I got was, don't try and be one stop shop for everything. That never happens. Amazon is a one stop shop because we are talking about 35 years down the line. So don't try and be a one stop shop for anything.
And the third?
And the third is obviously, if because I realized one thing, it's not about storytellers or not, but then you genuinely need people who have vision, right? As much as people hate them, it's not about storytelling. Please don't get me. I mean, don't mistake between a visionary and a storyteller, right?
Hmm.
You might be a good storyteller, but you might be faffing. But does someone have a vision, right? If someone does not have a vision and he's just thinking of okay and cashing, I don't like that kind of thing, right? I genuinely don't like that kind of thing. That person should be willing to fail, right? As an individual, I am willing to forego all my investments, not except maybe rupee 5, but yeah. I discussed this with Tushar as well. He said, I think we need to encash when we get a chance in this particular opportunity. I said, it's okay. I mean, recover करके भी क्या कर लेंगे? Maths are in the favor of staying put, right? Maths are in the favor of staying put. 3-5 लाख का वापस 3-5 लाख के क्या ही कर लोगे? गलती से वो चल गया तो,
Hmm.
right? So, and that will come only when you have a founder who is a visionary, right? You can't have guys who are just wanting to do BAU. You can't have guys who are way too operational. You obviously need operational guys. No discount and disrespect. And this is coming from a guy who has not done. I mean, the last few years, all I've been doing is operations in
Hmm.
whichever firm I've been doing, right? But then startups can't be run only by people from operations or doing just what is already happening in the industry.
Got it. Got it. Three sectors your future bets would be on.
I didn't think about this. One, as I said, is not a sector as such, but yeah, B2B SaaS is one. Um, right? As much as we might think that fintech में जो होना था हो गया है, don't be surprised if you meet something new tomorrow, if you encounter something new tomorrow, right? The reason is very simple. Whatever macro का ज्ञान मैंने तुम्हें दिया, तो उतना अगर कंट्री बढ़ेगा तो पैसा चाहिए होगा. Businesses need capital.
Individuals need capital to spend, right? So whoever can come up with innovative models. I mean, obviously, innovation on paper is not going to be good enough. Execution is the key. But fintech second, I would say. Um, third, if anyone were to ask me, I just thought and I forgot. Uh, I wouldn't say food and stuff because something like an ONDC, something that can capitalize on ONDC,
Right.
right? Because that has huge potential. Again, it's not an acronym or not the in thing to say, right?
Mhm.
If you're able to divide a problem into multiple parts where you don't necessarily, this is taking asset light to a whole new level altogether. This is democratization of technology,
Mhm.
right? If there are people who can actually capitalize on ONDC, you never know. I mean, something big, something really, really, really big can happen there.
Understood. My next set of questions are this or that. Founders with strong institutional background or founders with strong operational experience in the domain?
I don't like the word operational experience, but experience in the domain.
Okay. Large market with several VC funded players or growing market with lesser competition, what I would call as a white space or a gray space?
White space.
Startups with profitable startup which is profitable from day one, startup which has profitability in the foreseeable future but currently burning, or hyper growth focused startup in the near term and long term profitability vision.
Do I have the option to explain this a little, Ankit?
Go ahead.
The latter. Uh, because of the current situation, because of so many stories that are profitable or this or that, please understand the whole philosophy of startups, and that's how a startup differentiates itself from others. I'm not saying you have to necessarily burn. That's not the point,
Hmm.
right? But what separates a startup from any other firm, a typical brick and mortar, or even a services or a product firm for that matter, is its propensity to grow, right? If it was all about profitability, यार मैं बहुत सिंपल है भाई, मैं बजाज फाइनेंस में एचडीएफसी बैंक में पैसा लगा के बैठ जाऊंगा, सिंपल है, मेरे को कोई स्टार्टअप इन्वेस्टमेंट करने की जरूरत नहीं है, राइट? आप हरा ही नहीं सकते एचडीएफसी बैंक को, सिंपल बात है, राइट? अगर सेफ बेट ही खेलना है, प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी की बात करना है, दे हैव द लोवेस्ट interest rates on commercial papers based on which they withdraw money and lend. Bajaj Finance borrows at the lowest rates and lends out at the highest rate. You can't beat these businesses, right? We, as a startup investor, as much as what people might say, right? VCs have a different reason. See, we have to understand we are not VCs. I'm not saying inferior. Please don't mistake. We have to understand at what stage we are coming in. We are coming in at the earliest stage. VCs don't come in at the earliest stage. They have the reasons to try and search for profitable startups. अगर आप 4 साल से काम कर रहे हो, पैसा नहीं निकाल रहे, तो ऑब्वियसली आपके आपके साथ कुछ गलत हो रहा है, राइट? हम कौन सा 4 साल वाले स्टार्टअप में इन्वेस्ट करने वाले हैं? हम 6 महीना 1 साल एमवीपी उस स्टेज में भी इन्वेस्ट, राइट? Don't expect a company to, I mean, if they're producing profits on day one, I would rather not invest in that unless if there someone has found a magic formula basis which they are saying that हम पहले दिन में 1 रुपए ला रहे हैं but subsequently भी हम 2 और 4 और 8 लाएंगे, वो तो फिर पता नहीं भाई, मतलब आप जिम सिमोन्स को भी पीछे छोड़ गए हो, right? So you we need to be very clear, very clear. I mean, among all other philosophies that I've spoken, you need to understand what role you are playing in the ecosystem and what is the thought process you need to have. The thought process that any startup investor needs to have, an angel investor, not a startup investor, angel investor needs to have, is not profitability. It is growth, right? It is growth. I mean, this is my philosophy and I'm my reasons, because only then you're going to unearth the 100x or the 1000x or 10,000x. And
Mhm.
it's not just about yourself, because only then something like a Google or a Facebook or a WhatsApp or something equivalent will come out, right? अब प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी के पीछे पड़े रहोगे ना, आपको चाय वाले बिजनेस में डालो ना यार, फिर पैसे जो डेली पैसे निकालता है, पानीपुरी वाला डेली पैसे निकालता है, उसके फ्रेंचाइजी में डालो, आपको दैट साउंड्स अनफैंसी टू यू, देन इन्वेस्ट इन द फ्रेंचाइजी ऑफ चाय पॉइंट. क्यों नहीं
Mhm.
इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं? पैसे निकालता है ना वो. तो वी हैव टू बी फोकस्ड ऑन ग्रोथ. Sorry to
But
take a detour and explanation, but
no,
yeah.
absolutely works. My final question: pre-seed seed startup at a lucrative valuation or startup having achieved its MVP but coming at a premium valuation?
I wanted to say the former, but yeah, iska koi, this is difficult to say this or that, because I have a feeling this might vary from opportunity to opportunity. I genuinely feel that. Right? As a category, if you were to ask me, basis all the answers that you have heard, I would definitely evaluate the former. I would prefer the former. But again, अगर कोई बंदा आता है, I regret one of the firms, one of the startups I didn't invest in, Healthy Sure, right? I genuinely remember, and I don't want to take names here, but then I genuinely remember I was very keen on investing in Healthy Sure, but I didn't, because trust me, that is the, and I'm not saying this because there is subsequent round, right, or are about to, I don't know. That is the most clear presentation I have ever seen, right? Clear in terms of clarity of thought, in terms of what they wanted to do, right? Um, so point is varies from opportunity to opportunity. अगर कोई MVP stage में आ रहा है, later stage में भी आ रहा है, but अगर बहुत ही ज्यादा clear understanding है बंदे का, I know it boils down to execution, but आपके point में you evaluate basis whatever you have in front of you at that point in time, right? So if there is a good guy who is able to think through, right, who clearly knows his, one last message I still remember. Please please listen to Kunal Shah's interviews. I mean, he can come across as a madcap, but then some of the things he says are legit good, right? Uh, in one sentence, he summarized: if you want to start something, um, just start anything for which you are solving a problem for which someone is willing to pay, right? So one of the things, when you asked me, I don't remember the question, but it was about one of the three things that you look at. I One of the things is, does the founder know the buyer? It is very important to know whether the founder knows the buyer or not, right? Because if you don't know who you are selling to, right, you are going to waste a lot of time, right? And that's what differentiates people with connections or backgrounds and all that, because they know who they are selling to. It's not about smarts. People बोलते कॉन्टेक्ट्स वाली बात नहीं है. उनको ये पता है कि मैं ये solution जो बेच रहा हूँ, it's not about the person as in the name, it's about which, who is my, क्या बोलते हैं उसको, हमारे
Customer.
B2B sales, हाँ
Know your customer.
हाँ, know your customer. Yeah, you need to know, okay, is this going, I'm going to sell it to the accounts guy, I'm going to sell it to the finance guy, I'm going to sell it to the logistics guy, or who is my seller, buyer. So please know your buyer. If you find a startup guy who not just knows the problem and the solution, but also clearly knows who is the buyer, then I think, I mean, outside of asset light and all that stuff, but whether asset light or not, if that guy knows the customer, trust me, he has cracked half the code.
Called. So thanks, Sahil. Thank you so much. Brings me to the end of this podcast. Very informative, very detailed conversation with you, like always. Well, we've extended on time, but we've definitely gathered some beautiful insights for our viewers, for our first time listeners. So thank you so much for taking out that time. Hope we can have more such conversations. So with that, we
Always,
conclude this episode. Thank you.
always
Thank
a
you.
pleasure, and looking forward to meeting you and other founders again sometime soon, because yeah,
Thank
that's a
you.
good thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity. Thank you. Genuinely appreciate this. Thank
Thank
you.
you.